What's up, Jackalopes? I'm Hope, and today I want to talk about all the books that I read in July. I read 4 books in July, which is the same number of books as I read in June, but I doubled the number of pages I read because I read like 560 pages in June, but I read 1,100 and some pages in July. So I'm really happy with that, and I am feeling more motivated to read more, so I'm really pleased. But these are the 4 books I read. And yeah, I gave all of these 4 stars or more. The first of these is Monstrous Volume 1 by Marie Lu and Sana Takeda. This is a graphic novel following a young woman who is an Arcanic, which seems to be a group of like various monsters. Some of the Arcanics have like animal features, some of them are like Cyclops. This young woman is, she looks like a human, but she is missing her left arm, and occasionally a demon explodes out of her left arm, which is interesting. This story is very violent, but it follows this character Micah as she is searching for information about her mother. I really enjoyed this, but it took me several pages to get into it because the first few pages are really, they're full of gratuitous violence, which makes sense once you know more about the world, but up until you have that context, it just seems like it's there for no reason. So the first few pages I really struggled through, and I was really strongly considering just DNFing this one, but decided to keep reading. Glad I pushed through because I really enjoyed this, and I am looking forward to reading more from the series, particularly because I'm interested to see how Micah develops over the course of the story, particularly in her relationships with her 2 companions. Next up, I read Good Omens, I say I read Good Omens, I should say I finished Good Omens. I was reading this in February 2020, and then the pandemic started, and I immediately stopped reading. I didn't read anything for quite a while, and now I've been chipping away at this one for months. I read the first half before the pandemic, and it took me the rest of the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, to read the other half. My spreadsheet says it took 504 days, which is the most days it's taken me for anything I've read recently. Probably ever. But I did finally finish it, and I can finally watch the Prime adaptation. My cat is shoving his paw under the door. He's very upset with me. He'll be okay. He can come in a minute when I've finished filming. Anyway, this follows Crowley and Aziraphale as they are trying to avert the apocalypse. They are a demon and an angel, respectively. And I think that this is really a fun story. I thought that was a really interesting premise. I do think there's like maybe too many perspectives. I think that's part of what made this book drag for me and why it took me so long. In particular, I didn't really care for them. So a lot of the sections, particularly in the first half of the book, where it was the perspective of the them, just didn't compel me at all. And it took me ages to get through them because I was really just trying to push through them to get to the bits that I cared about. The latter half of the book that changed. I did really like the them in the kind of maybe the last third, but the first half I was not enjoying the them. So when I wasn't reading this, I had no desire to pick it up and read it, but when I was reading it, I was really enjoying it. So it was a weird experience. It took me way longer than it should have to read this, but I'm glad that I'm finally done and I can finally watch the miniseries. Is it a miniseries? Is it just standard series? I don't know. I've seen the first episode though. Next book I read was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, The Witness for the Dead by Catherine Addison. This is also a new favorite, so I'm very pleased. But this one is a kind of a companion novel to The Goblin Emperor, which was my favorite book I read last year. And this follows one of the side characters from that. So in this one, a character named Thara Kelleher, who is a witness for the dead, meaning he can kind of ask someone's spirit. If they haven't been dead for too long, he can ask their spirit kind of general questions. He's not always going to get like a direct answer, but he can basically like touch someone's remains, and unless they've been cremated, I think, but he can touch their remains and kind of experience their last thoughts or some of their last memories and kind of guide whatever he's going to see based on like what question he's asking. So he's using this to like solve murders or resolve disputes or find missing parents, things like that, and or find missing people in general. So this follows Kelleher as he is trying to solve a murder of a young woman who showed up in the canal late one evening, and so he's trying to solve her murder, but also kind of getting pulled into a couple of other side investigations, and he's also getting pulled into a couple of like political situations which he doesn't like. He's not really interested in politics at all, so he's navigating the kind of complicated politics of the order that he's a part of throughout the story as well. I really enjoyed this. Kelleher is a great protagonist. He's really interesting because he has a very strong sense of justice and of moral duty to always seek the truth at any cost. So it doesn't matter what he finds, he always pursues the truth to the very end, and he frequently warns people like, what we find isn't necessarily going to be what you're hoping for, but I am bound to see this through. And so I think that makes him a really interesting protagonist, because he frequently ends up in these situations where he is having to tell somebody something that they don't want to hear, but he feels obligated, in part because he is technically, as a part of his job, required to do so, but also that he feels very strongly about doing so, that he's very much bound to the truth. So I love Kelleher as a protagonist because I like the complicated situations that creates, and I also think Kelleher is very compassionate. He's just a very lovable character, and I really liked seeing him grow and develop throughout the story, and also seeing him start to make some new friends and kind of build connections with other people in the city. And I just think this is a really delightful, ultimately kind of sad but also uplifting story. And I think that if you like The Goblin Emperor, it's worth diving into. I also think if you like mysteries, particularly like fantasy mysteries, this is a really, really, really good version of that. The last book I read was Storm of Locusts by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the second book in the Sixth World series, which follows the monster hunter Maggie Hosky. That's where I'm getting the E from. As she's going on these kind of different adventures to find out more about various monsters or seeming monsters that are appearing in her community. So this is set in a world where the United States has basically been destroyed by climate disaster. A big flood that they call the Big Water happened, and what's left is basically the narrow strip of land in the middle of the country. And so Maggie is from Dene, which is the Navajo territory north of Albuquerque, and she's kind of travels around and fights monsters, basically. There's like, it's a post-apocalyptic world that's really dangerous, and Maggie is doing some effort towards making it less dangerous. But she's really interesting because I think a lot like Micah from Monstrous, she's very aggressive and stubborn and can be really unlikable and just mean sometimes, but I think also ultimately Maggie is a compassionate person. She cares about people, and she kind of hates that she cares about people, which I think is interesting, but she just does some really interesting things, and I like that she gets to be conflicted about like the things that she does and about who she is as a person. And I really liked this following on from the first book because I think that this does a good job of really developing Maggie's relationships with some of the side characters, and I cannot wait to read the third book. Unfortunately for me, I don't think there's a release date announced yet. At least there wasn't the last time I looked at Goodreads. But I am very much looking forward to reading more about Maggie and her friends because they are all delightful and I love them. Those are all books that I read. They're all great. I'm really pleased. And I am hoping I will read more in August because I have a lot more things planned for August. So fingers crossed that I can keep up the momentum. But that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I hope you will consider leaving a like, maybe subscribing to see what comes next. And I'm going to do a comment question of the day. So what is your favorite book that you've read recently? If you've read anything really good, I want to know what your newest favorite book is, because I'm always looking for new recommendations, and I think that'll be fun. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.